Da 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 do 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 Dora da 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 Dora do 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 Dora. Yo, hello, what's up, Razan? Yo, hello. Your mic
Yo,
muted.
hello.
Yo, hello, bro. How you doing?
Yo, what's up, my brothers?
How you doing?
Wait? Can you hear what I'm saying?
Yeah, I can
Yeah,
hear you.
I can hear you. Don't worry.
All right. So what did you want to discuss again?
It's your Kalam collapse argument.
I mean, yeah, like I don't remember the argument specifically because it's been a while since I've used it.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
maybe you can remind me of it.
That's fine. I just like if you could describe what the argumentation is saying, I'd appreciate that greatly.
Well, yeah, it's basically saying is that if you take the Quran to be an attribute of
Yo,
Allah,
Risen, what's up, bro? I'm not
yo,
gonna
what's up?
lie, my topic there,
Yeah, I'm listening.
jokes I
I'm just
do. I'm not gonna lie.
All right, yeah. So the argument is just that if you take the Quran to be an attribute of Allah, so well, depending on what creed that you hold to, and because almost like different creeds are gonna say that, like maybe the Quran is not an attribute of Allah, but if you do take the Quran to be an attribute of Allah, um, then that would also mean that transitively Allah has contingent parts because the Quran has contingent parts.
wait. So, first of all, how does the Quran have contingent parts? Go ahead.
Because the Quran contains contingent. Okay, so just think of it like this, right? So think of the Quran of as like a conjunction of so for example, when I say the Quran is true, what I mean there is just that the conjunction of propositions that form the Quran is true. And so if it's the case that the Quran has a contingent proposition, that also means that um part of one of the conjuncts of the conjunction is contingent, and so that would also mean that Allah's contingent parts give transitivity.
Okay, so that doesn't like really answer. Okay, hold on. So you're saying based upon the formation of the Quran and like the sense of it being conjunctive with each other, like just basically entails that its existence would depend upon this conjunction type thing, or are you saying if one of the propositions within the conjunctive is going to be contingent, that also makes it contingent, or just
Yeah, that's how it works. So if you're familiar with classical logic, you'd know there's a rule that says that if one of the conjuncts in a proposition can be false, and the propositions, then the proposition can also be false. And so, like, if you have, even if
Oh,
you have
okay.
like
So then it's like okay. So then it's like capable of failure. So okay. So okay. So first of all, these contingent propositions just need the Quran to exist. Otherwise, then they are not literally just contingent propositions.
I don't understand what you mean.
Yeah, what I mean is that it's gonna need the Quran in itself to have these contingent propositions. So the Quran wouldn't be made or just like have these contingent parts which make it contingent, because what you're saying is that these specific propositions allow for these the Quran in itself or the conjunctives to have some type of failure, but in itself needs the Quran. So if you're
Well,
saying
yeah, I'm not
hold
getting what you're saying.
on,
So
wait, hold on, I was not done. Hold on, give me a second, please, and thank you. Um, what I'm basically just saying is that since you're just talking about a sort of like contingent truth type thing, right? Yes or no?
mm, yeah, I don't understand what you mean by the question. It's like if
Yeah,
you just
yeah,
ask
yeah. Like
if
what
it
I'm.
because again
Yeah.
what I'm saying is just that again what I'm saying is that obviously you take like the Quran to be like the speech of Allah, and I'm just saying that if we think of the Quran as a conjunction of the propositions to form like
Yeah,
it be
yeah, yeah, I get that.
yeah.
I get that. But like mainly responding to your like thing, what you said about I don't know what you mean by contingent truth. What I'm basically just saying is that it's
No, I
open
said I
to
don't know what you mean by your questions. Like
yeah, no, yeah, that's what I'm trying to get at. Just let's just hold on for a minute. What I'm basically saying is that it can be different within another world. Are you like allowing that like some type of failure thing because it's supposed to be like a necessary type thing since it's like an attribute of Allah?
wait, can you repeat what you said?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I said basically, are you basically talk about in the sense of like a capable of failing if like in this another possible order, which just contradicts it being necessary and that type of sense of contingencies, like
Yeah.
modal
Yeah.
contingency.
So by contingent, I just mean that it could fail to exist or could fail to be true.
Oh, okay. So if that's going to be the case, we cannot accept that. The reason why for that to be the case is because obviously we need Allah, or just like the entire existence of Allah for the Quran to actually, you know, if we do take it to be an attribute, right, of Allah, firstly, we need the existence of Allah. Allah is viewed as necessary, and at the same time, it would contradict the essence of Allah, or just like the reflexive essence of
Yeah.
the. Yeah,
That's
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
Like
yeah. Hold on, I'm trying to
you
get to.
can say that. Wait one second. Just to give some clarification, you can say that like you wouldn't be allowed to this under Islam, but that's not the point. The point is that it's a reductio. So the whole point is that
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
supposed to
yeah.
show the
I'm aware it's
absurdities of it.
reductio, but yeah, I understand it's a reductio. The point to show it's like an ad absurdum, but I'm trying to show why that reductio in itself is inadequate. Like, yeah, I get that part, but at the same time, right? Obviously, if it's the case that Allah is necessary, and because of the setting, it's open to failure. The propositions are contingent. In that case, if we take Allah to be the grounding of the said attribute, or just like need the said existence to actually have that reflexive essence, or just like the attribute which allows for like a reflexivity of the essence in itself, we're still gonna need that said part to actually form an potency for that, or just like say for an example, the actualization of that attribute, right? And obviously because it's contingent, it reduces the whole point about it being necessary in that case, and allows for failure of the necessary being. But since I'm saying Allah is supposed to be a necessary being, and because if we did take the contingent, or just not even contingent, just like what you say to be quote unquote contingent propositions, which are capable of having failure within a distinct type of modal conceivability, or just modal conceivability in general, that would contradict it, right?
I don't. Okay,
Obviously,
so
okay, hold on,
I
hold on.
don't understand. I don't understand like a lot of things you're saying. So obviously, like even if you bite the bullet on the reductio, you can still say that a lie is necessary. But what you'd be biting the bullet on is just that number one, the Quran varies from possible world to possible world, and because obviously, again, if the Quran is the speech of Allah, and you're saying that in one world the Quran contains a proposition that I don't know, maybe Muhammad is the prophet, and you take the proposition that Muhammad is the prophet to be a contingent proposition, then that would mean that in another world, um, the Quran is different. So the Quran affirms different possible, different propositions in different possible
Yeah, yeah,
worlds.
yeah. I'm aware of
Where
that.
I'm not.
So
Wait one sec. One sec.
yeah, you
And
cut me off
just to give
once.
more clarification, again, you can still hold that Allah is necessary even if you do bite the bullet that he has some contingent proper parts. Because again, like you could take an extrinsic model of attribution, you can just say that Allah has essential and accidental attributes. But yeah, like
Not
that's what I'm
necessarily,
saying.
because that entire view would just be fucking paradoxical. The reason why behind that is that you also affirm, because you already said if we take it to be an attribute of like that, and that said attribute is contingent in itself, or the said attribute has contingency in the capability to fail, then in itself, saying accidental, but that just allows for change within a law, or just like
Wait, no,
the
that's not what I
attribute
said.
has.
That's not.
Okay,
I never said that the attribute. I
hold
never
on,
said
hold
that
on.
the
I'm not
attribute would
done yet.
have.
I'm
Wait.
trying to
I'm
understand
saying.
what I'm
Yeah, I'm
saying.
clarifying. I never said that the attribute would have the possibility to fail. I said that the attribute would be cross-world variant. So in different worlds, it would be different, which is
Okay,
what I think is
yeah,
a
yeah,
problem.
that's the whole point I'm trying to attack. Like, I understand that part. You already clarified that quite well. Thank you. I appreciate the attempt to, but I'm sure I got it down. Thank you very much. But the point being is that if it goes through change, then in itself, that restricts necessity in itself, because the necessary being does not change within every type
How?
of possible entity.
Wait.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Again, that just wait. One sec. That just assumes like that just assumes a model of necessity that I wouldn't grant. Like, why would anybody grant that a necessary being can't change? Like, why would anybody grant that necessary being is like active
Because
here?
that's literally just analytical by what a necessary
I mean,
being is. Like,
no. How is it
normal
analytical?
to have
Why take a necessary being to be just a being that exists in all worlds? And so, how would it be the case that if a being can change, that wouldn't mean that it's necessary? Like, it's not analytic. It's not in a definition. At
that
most, it would be
is
like something.
okay,
It would be
hold
some synthetic fact it would be some synthetic fact that you'd be trying to add on to like what a necessary being is.
Not necessarily. Okay. The reason why it's going to be analytical is because we already know what the definition of a fucking necessary being is. Like, in the same way it exists in all possible worlds, is what a necessary being is. And so that's called a metaphysical necessity. We talk about God in the set of all contingent fucking things. In itself, if he's the grounding for all of them, which is basically just MET, modal essentialist theism, basically, he's the grounding for all modal truths in that generalist like state, etc. But here's the problem, right? That's what I'm gonna underline because clearly underlining the contradiction within that. If you allow for a modal rigid designator, which is just basically gonna be the case where the said being does exist in every possible world, but his essential nature and etc. Like it isn't exactly numerical identity, and it's open to fucking
And
change.
no, that's not what I'm saying. Again,
Yeah,
again,
no,
like what what's obviously,
okay. I
what I'm saying
understand
is
it's
that
not what you're saying on verbatim level, but what I'm saying
yeah, no,
is the
it's just not.
that
It's
it's
just like it's
implied.
just
Okay, no,
contradictory to what I'm
no,
saying.
no, no,
Because
no.
what I'm
That is not
saying, wait,
contrary to
one
what you're
sec,
saying. Okay,
one
hold
sec.
on, hold on. That is not okay. Yes, it's contrary to what you're saying because you're not making any fucking sense right now.
Yeah, wait, no, I
It's like
am
the whole
making
fucking.
sense. What I'm saying is
No,
that
you are not.
wait. What
No,
I'm
no, no,
saying,
no, 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 no. You're gonna let me explain because obviously you can't get past yourself. You're not letting me explain. The
wait.
whole fucking point. No,
I
no, no,
already
no, no.
I
I
already
don't
get
care
what
what you
you're
have to
saying. I
say
just
at this
don't
point
think what you're
because
saying
no,
attacks
no,
the
no, no,
argument.
no, no, no. We ain't gonna do this because I'm gonna review my point, right? I'm gonna actually provide a reductio as to why. Actually, I do agree. It's actually contrary to what you say because you're not making any fucking sense. But same point is that you're just allowing a modal rigid designator if it's the point that it's a fucking attribute towards the law, the fucking Quran, right? In itself towards the being, right? You're allowing it to change through varieties of world. That is what is defined as a modal rigid designator. If you allow for the change in that point, which is just basically affirming like inside fucking classics like essentialism, if you involve a fucking modal rigid designator. But the whole fucking point is that if you allow for that, that just allows for the said attribute and etc., which is basically pertaining to the necessary being to go through change. You basically just say that a necessary being has a part capable of failing. So if that's the point that you have a capable part of failing, the necessary being is not necessary in the sense of that because in modal semantics, it's capable of changing in that sense. In that sense, that means it's contingent upon a fucking
Oh my
proposition
goodness. Oh
or a
my god.
conceived
You'd
proposition.
only. Oh my
Okay?
god.
No,
You'd
no, no,
only.
no, no,
Okay.
no, no, no,
This
no.
is
You're
this is
not
really
gonna cut
stupid.
me off every fucking
This is
time.
really stupid. You'd only. Oh my god.
Anyways,
This is
the
really
whole
really
fucking
stupid.
point is that you
Yeah.
cannot grant that there is contingent propositions if it is capable of changing the entirety or the entirety of necessity or the essential property of being a fucking necessary being. That entire fucking point right there, since you're allowing a modal rigid designator, per what you say, implied, not verbatim, by the way, just so you understand the context of what's being implied and etc. Right? And again, in that set point, right, I'm gonna explain to you why it's analytically the case for a necessary being. A necessary being, or metaphysical necessity, is necessary within all fucking worlds. And if it's enacted upon, right, or changed, it is not necessary because it falls under the definition of what contingent is within modal semantics.
No,
Modal
oh my god, no. Why
semantics.
would anybody
No, no,
grant
no,
that?
no,
Oh
no,
my
no,
god.
no,
Why
no,
would
no.
any
Modal
that's just begging the
semantics.
question.
Modal
That's just begging the
semantics is
question.
basically
Oh
what
my
just
god,
means
that's just
something
begging the
that can
question.
fail.
That's
That's
begging
not
the
begging the
question.
question because that's not going circular,
Yes,
retard.
it is.
How am I going circular? How am I going circular? Go ahead.
Because
How am
okay,
I going
what? Oh
circular?
my god, why? Oh my god, just okay. I'll explain why you're going circular. Then I'll just explain why like the contention you just brought up makes absolutely no sense. So the reason why you're going circular is just that I said that it would not be analytically true because what it means for a necessary being or what we mean when we say that something is necessary in model logic is that exists in all possible worlds. And so you could obviously have the same being that has a cross-world variance in virtue of its accidental properties instead of its essential properties. Now, what I'm saying is that a person or a Muslim might be able to bite the bullet on this argument and then simply just say that the Quran or the propositions of the Quran aren't essential attributes of God, but they're accidental attributes of God, such that they can change and fail to exist in different worlds, but God's intrinsic properties would not be affected by this change. As long as God's intrinsic properties are not affected by the change, and he still be the same being essentially across all possible worlds. Now, you beg the question because I'm asking you, what about being necessary makes you, what about being necessary makes you such that you cannot change in any possible world, and then you just repeated the definition necessary, and you just said that it would just make you contingent. Well, no, it wouldn't make you contingent because again, the definition of contingency under modal logic is just a being that can fail to exist, not a being that has attributes that can fail to exist, but a being that can fail to exist. So the being in of itself fail to exist. And so when you say that being is contingent, then you'd be saying that it's intrinsically contingent. However, if you're saying that some of the being's properties are contingent, you'd be saying that some of the being's properties are extrinsically contingent. And so you'd be able to hold that God's properties, or some of God's properties or parts could fail to exist, and they'd be extrinsically contingent, but God Himself would not be intrinsically contingent. That's what I'm basically saying.
Okay, can I reply now, please and thank you? Okay, now I'm assuming I can. Um, First of all, about accidental properties. Accidental properties are something that doesn't really matter to the essence of a fucking being. It doesn't. Even then, it's still essential towards the necessity or the attribute of being fucking necessary, or just like the nature or the reflexive fucking nature of being necessary. It does not matter. It's just not intrinsic to the entirety of the fucking being itself. Okay, and of course this nigga goes on fucking deafin. Anyways, speaking about the fucking whole point about accidental properties and essential properties as well. Essential properties are. This is what originally was said within the said debate, or what was rather the reputation coming up towards what Rizwan was saying, but the nigga had to go and like these plus he was totally wrong. So when we talk about reflexive things, they're just counter attributes. Essence is coextensive with the essential attributes to actually prescribe a nature. Therefore, if it's necessary to prescribe nature via essential attributes, or just rather what the attributes are, the essence has to be reflective of the attributes to actually perform nature. Therefore, it would be self-reflective, and if it's an accidental property, that would mean properties in essence in itself, or just self-reflective things that can attributes are arbitrary, which would just mean it's capable of choosing anything else, which is still just contingent, still contradicts the essence in itself. So if that's going to be the case, it's already a contradiction coming from him, and we would need, said properties to actually form like a good, like just like a proper model of actual essence and etc. And why accidental properties cannot be the case because they're essential either way. If they're essential for self-reflectivity, for essence, and if something is capable of changing, that means it revokes the essentiality of the essence being necessary. Because of that, it's a change within the modal sense of failing, because the being doesn't fail entirely, which was his entire fucking point. No, that can't be the case because all like properties are essential in terms of like uh, think about law because if anything changes, that means parts of a law is capable of failing. If that's law is capable of failing, that is a contradiction for this thing. Yo. Oh, sorry, I'm trying to like record communication.
Yeah, so what were you like recording?
Yeah. Hold on. Wait. Can you mute the mic? Hold on, bro. Can you mute the mic? Can you mute the mic? Okay, thank you, appreciate it, bro. Appreciate you. What I'm just recording was what was supposed to be originally said in my first debate with Rizhan here, and like basically just the entire point is that he had to go, and the recording ended, so I'm supposed to give the reputation that was in there. So basically, what I'm just saying is that because attributes are just supposed to be necessary for reflexive things, and they're coextensive with essence in terms of the essentials view attributes being essential for the reflexive coverage attribute of the essence in itself, the nature of the being. If attributes are supposed to be necessary, if we say that they have contingent things or just contingent parts, like say for example, change within mortal world, that would just imply a modal rigid designator, but it still imply the thing is capable of going through change. And if it's the case, it's capable of going through change, that means the attribute fails and we cannot have it as an accidental property if it is essential for the reflectivity of the essence. If it's essential for that, then it's obviously essential for the nature of the being, which would just contradict to being accidental in the first place, because it would matter towards the intrinsic part of the being. But obviously, if it's needed for reflexive of the being to be a Cambridge attribute, or essence needs to be reflective or just reflect the set attributes to actually have a nature, then attributes in itself have to be applicable towards the thing, and intrinsic parts would only apply specific parts of the set necessary being is only capable of not going through change. But if other attributes are capable of going through change, that suggests a paradoxical statement, or just paradoxical in general. Like if you're necessary, but also just like at the same time contingent, cannot be the case because obviously have a contingent thing with the necessary thing is basically still just applying and changing its nature. Therefore, its necessary nature can fail. Basically, in that terms of like things like that, to actually reflected attributes would just be a predicate for that. Governs the essential formation of nature and potency. Doesn't matter if you can qualify it as accidental, if it's still capable of changing the being, as in the point about coextensive with reflexive Cambridge attributes, then it's the point that you can have change because that changes the being still. And essentialism just says that you cannot change it in any possible world because then the contradiction fails. So if it is capable of failing under that model, then obviously the necessary being fails and revokes the necessity part. So his point about accidental properties only being applicable towards specific parts of the necessary being that aren't essential to it. It's only essential towards what it is considered as. But when we refer to a necessary being, we have to refer to, or just like within the essentials view, because I literally defined it within the debate. The basically, was it modal essentialist theism? Because it's just an essentialist view, everything is essential to the being to actually ground moral truths. If we affirm its attributes that exist within these propositions, etc., are different from one another, it would obviously just be the case that basically in that sense the necessary being is capable of change within other worlds due to propositions that would just show contingency and failure capable of failing within modal semantics, as I said, because the reflectivity isn't reflecting the set attributes like it needs to. It's an entire set of distinct attributes in itself where the attribute itself changes, therefore not the same attribute, which leads to contradictory sets of the being which you cannot have, which is why it has to be essential and not accidental, as I already said. So another thing, but the begging the question point, yeah, because that's how we define necessary being within essential views. Um, otherwise, yeah, that's the contradiction point. What he said about accidental properties is already coextensive with his point about begging the question circularity. I already countered the point by saying said accidental property is going to be the case, and it's necessary for this being to not go through changes and that, and I don't think that's circular at all because it's not assuming the true conclusion, not assuming the same assumption. Because I'm saying it's necessary, it can't go through change at all. I'm saying because of its reflexivity point, it cannot be the case at all. So I'm using different reasoning for different argumentations because I'm saying one, it's necessary, and then two, it changes the necessary nature. Two distinct reasonings as well, and then I apply the fucking accidental properties argument because he brought it out there with Duckio. But anyways, that's it. Bye.